My theme of last year was reject passivity in all aspects of life. Like, just don't be passive. Don't just be going with the flow. Like, be intentionally pursuing your wife, pursuing your kids, growing your business, growing relation. Just don't be passive. Don't be a passive man. There's way too many passive men already on earth.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the BizDad podcast. Super excited today to talk to Lars Anderson. Looking forward to chatting with him for a little while about his 3 awesome kids and his wife and the businesses that he's involved in. All that said, Lars, go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us about your family, and then tell us about your business.
Yeah, first, just want to say thank you to you, Adam, for having me on. It'll be more than anything just fun to catch up with you and chat for a little while here. But I am in Minnesota, so born and raised in the Twin Cities here. I married my high school sweetheart. We went to a Christian university called Bethel University here just north of the cities, and got married after our last year in school. Now we have been married for 6 years. We got three little kids, a 3-year-old boy named Cruz, a 2-year-old girl named Josie, and then a 3-month-old named Rocco. So we got a good full household of little people. And I am in real estate for my job as a residential realtor and run a team under the RE/MAX umbrella. And then we also purchase investment real estate. You know, it could be single family homes or multifamily or commercial space. So that's kind of on the professional side, what we're up to. And then I coach baseball with my brother. He's the head varsity baseball coach at the local high school. So in the spring, I coach with him and that's a few months. So that's kind of what we're in the middle of right now as well. So nice. That's a little snapshot.
Awesome. That's great. It's a high school sweetheart. I'm looking forward to it. We'll dig into that a little bit for sure. Those are always fun stories, and 3 kids under 3 and under. That's a whole house full of craziness going on right there. Yeah, for sure. So tell me a little bit about some background on you. I want to know what it was like for you kind of growing up. Tell me about your dad. Tell me about maybe even your dad's dad. What was it like growing up for you in the Twin Cities?
Yeah, so I'm the youngest of 5 kids. My parents both grew up in a city called Cambridge. It's like an hour north of Minneapolis here. And my household was awesome to grow up in. Both my parents, for sure, for me and for my wife, our faith in being Christians it really drives everything for us. And that was, for me, it was, I saw it modeled with my parents. I look back and I go, 4 siblings, all the siblings still love each other very much. And we're all kind of best friends. And that was created because my parents, they loved each other. They, protected us from things we needed to be protected from. They also allowed us to make mistakes. They instilled Christian background in us. Obviously, we each get to make our own decision of if we're going to pursue our faith or have a faith in Jesus or not. But I would say my dad specifically is he was a entrepreneur, a good businessman. He wasn't in real estate. He's kind of later got into some real estate stuff. But business owner. He was my baseball coach. Somehow it felt like he was the baseball coach for everyone all the time, which isn't possible. But he was just, my parents were, at sporting events and he was coaching and he was involved. And then he was also successful in business, but I wouldn't have known that necessarily. Like, it's not like he came home and was like, this happened during the workday. It's just, oh, Dad's home now. Now we can do things. As far as his dad, my grandpa he loves the Lord. He's a good worker. he has a servant's heart. He would be not necessarily someone that I've had lots of deep conversations. I would say not a huge talker, but Grandpa loves us very much and does activities and would always come and watch his grandkids and still to this day now watching great grandkids and stuff. But I think my dad has been, as years gone on, like very intentional in connecting, one-on-one with his kids as well. And so, yeah, that's a background. I'm very lucky to go, not everyone is, you don't get to choose the background that you come from, but to come from a background that is, where I can honestly say there's, I want to be like my dad, and he's a good picture of being like my dad is going to bring me, to being more similar to Jesus, which my goal is to walk as Jesus did. So that's a pretty special thing to be able to say that about your earthly dad.
Yeah. Yeah, no kidding. There's so many people out that have no idea, like when they hear the concept, the idea that, God is their father, right? That father side of God, and they have such a terrible earthly father. They're like, why would I ever want that? When you have that picture of an earthly father and you're like, like there's no, so it's wonderful to hear somebody who's like, no, if I'm more like my dad, that's getting me closer to being like Jesus. That's a completely different aspect than we normally hear being talked about, especially outside of the church pew, right? So I really love hearing that.
Yeah, that's 100% right. I mean, it is like if you have a dad that doesn't make good decisions, and obviously my dad's not perfect, so there's things that it's like I'm not blind to knowing that, but then to go, you have this God that loves you and he's your heavenly father, is like, well, just like you said, that's pretty tough to even start to get a feel for what that's like if you don't have a picture of it.
Yep, very much so. So, you mentioned your grandfather, also a Christian, but, didn't really, not a huge talker, but loved watching the grandkids and hanging out with you guys and seeing what was going on. So have you had conversation with your dad and or your grandpa to kind of understand what it was like for your dad growing up?
I have. I feel like probably not the best at recalling I feel like how I described him is probably feeding from experiences too of asking my dad of what that's, what was that like? And I think I can recall one conversation where he goes, I know my dad, loves me so much. It was maybe on Father's Day, and I was with him, and he was going to call my grandpa, and but he's not. And he would have explained him like that, where he's has a servant's heart, and he does the right thing. He's always shown my dad, doing the right thing and working hard, but wouldn't be, probably wouldn't have the like emotional connection that deep emotional connection that, maybe some dads would have with their kids, where it's a little bit more on the, I don't know if it's a sensitive side or something like that. So, which is probably, my dad's probably naturally more like that. My mom's very, what are other people's feelings, connection, way more, extremely hospitable by nature and from her parents. My dad would be, so my dad's probably a different man than he was, years, 20 years ago or something like that. It probably molded into a little bit of the best parts of my mom rubbing off on him too, of being, a little bit more.
Which I really hope is the case for all of us, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and when you think about it, I mean, it makes sense, right? When we're in our 20s and 30s, our goal, I mean, our mission in life is very different in our 20s and 30s than it is in our, 60s. So
Yep.
if our mission in life is right now to ensure that we're bringing in money, have a roof over the heads, and we're focused on that type of stuff, there's a lot less time for the emotion side of the house. And it's,
Yep.
we're driving to make sure we're being, still loving and caring parents, but like it's less of a concern, unless we're really being intentional about it on the emotional side, on the emotional connection with the kids. And then much later in life, it's like, I've succeeded. My kids are out doing what they need to do. I can kind of shed some of the armor. All right, here we go.
Yeah, 100%.
And then even biologically, our bodies lower. Something I recently learned, and it makes sense in this context, was your body actually naturally lowers the testosterone. Like after you get married and start having kids, your body purposely lowers the amount of testosterone you have, because your mission is no longer to now go out there and drive and slay the heads off monsters. Your mission is to be a present father taking care of kids. So if your mission is to be a present father taking care of kids, you need a little bit less of that testosterone going crazy through your blood, and you need to be there taking care of your family. But anyways, let's say cool. Neither here nor there, just something interesting that I learned about. Totally. And it could be completely fake. Somebody will probably call me on some comment somewhere and be like, no, you idiot, that's not what happens. But that's what I learned. So we'll see if it was correct or not when the internet sees this. It does. It does seem to make sense. All right. So you mentioned that your dad was successful in business, but it's something that you would not have known. Parse that out for me. Tell me what that means.
Yeah, I think the best way to describe it simply is just I wouldn't have known if my dad had a great day at work or a tough day at work by how he treated us at home or by how we drove to baseball practice together. I'm sure that's also probably me being young and naive and not quite knowing what's going on. But it was never talking, verbalizing, and hey, this happened. Not that we wouldn't ever hear what's going on. I mean, there'd be some, this fun thing happened at work, or maybe it was a really tough time because they had to, fire someone at work, or I don't know. But kind of overarching theme is that it didn't get pulled into how he treated us, any differently because of that. I would have known that he was him and my uncle ran this company together, and the company was growing, and would have been, asking a couple questions about it, in middle school and high school, but again, probably not really knowing too much what's going on. So that's kind of how I would describe it. Just like it didn't get dragged into, whether it was good or bad, it didn't get dragged into our family time. Or I don't remember nights he was in a lot of extracurricular, on a board or had this meeting or after, but it was never like, he came home at 8 p.m. because he was working a ton this week and, something like that. So great balance, maybe.
Okay. So what kind of exposure did you have? You said like in junior high and high school, you may have, known a little bit more about it. What kind of understanding of the business, and what kind of business was it, or is it still? I don't know if he still does it, but what kind of business was it that he and his brother were running?
Yeah. So he, my mom's dad, so my grandpa on my mom's side, bought this company, direct marketing company, and they did some fulfillment. So they would have big, huge printers. And back in the day, my grandpa going, hey, this mattress shop, I own this real estate, and there's a mattress shop, and they need better marketing. So created a company that had printers that would print off marketing and get it mailed out and have all the direct, the direct mailing information for every household that made X amount of dollars, and, kind of ahead of the time. So this is many years ago. Yeah. This company also to help print is like Bibles to go to Ukraine that were translated. And so it's some cool ministry stuff at the beginnings of this company. The company was almost going to get sold or dissolve. And then my dad and uncle, so my mom's brother, took over this company, we'll call it 30 years ago. This company they would have went, hey, should we stop what we're doing? They're both, I think, in banking. Stop what we're doing, take over this company and see if we can help grow Impact. Impact has then grown into 3 of my siblings. My brother-in-law and 2 of my brothers are now kind of on the executive team. So they dove into the business between 10 and 15 years ago. I really haven't been involved, but the company has grown it's a direct marketing company with $1 million, printers. And like if you get in the mail from Renewal by Anderson, Windows, 70% off your first 3 windows, call us. And it looks like someone was handwriting it or something like that. Renewal by Anderson is one of their biggest clients. So it's probably my brother-in-law's handwriting on there that's then sent out to, places all across the country. And they would have, they bought another company that has, is kind of the marketing wing of it. So would come up with a marketing plan for a company that wants to scale their business, through direct marketing mail. And then they fulfill all those orders and stuff like that. So the company was, call it a $2 million company. When my dad first took over, I'm making that number up, but something that was like not super big. The company's now a $70+ million company with 200+ employees.
That's awesome. Yeah. So good move on your uncle and your dad. Well done.
Yeah. So that's through years and years of, I wouldn't have known it. I would love to go and be a fly on the wall, but that's building a company through culture. That's all grounded in Christian morals, but culture, driving, getting good people, and then doing good business.
What were you aware of as you were growing up on how that was going?
I think I would have just went to this, it's a small office and then warehouse. And I would have gone and been like, look at all these people like working on these huge printing presses and how fast these things can fire out pieces of mail. And then I knew at one point they expanded the building by like double, and that was exciting. Our family went, and I was probably in middle school. But I can remember that's one of my few memories of it, is going and looking at this new building, and it looked all a huge added warehouse space, and eventually I started a landscaping company, and that became one of my clients, was mowing. So then in high school I would talk to some employees. I was the high schooler that's shirt off, looking probably very unprofessional, ripping a Z-turn mower across and mulching and picking weeds and doing that. And then I got obviously a better taste of what was going on when I would just be at the building once a week.
Did you catch yourself at all while you were growing up kind of wishing that you knew more about what it was, or were you just kind of in your own thing, doing your sports, doing whatever it is, that you didn't really pay much of attention to it?
Yeah, I think I never was like wanting, I don't think I was wanting, I think my dad would have answered questions if I asked more about it, and he did. I mean, I definitely had conversations that I'm just forgetting. But I wouldn't say I was wanting to know more about it. I was just doing my thing, playing sports, like you said.
So you said you have 2 brothers that are like executives over there now. Like, were they more like interested in that side of it, asking the questions and all of
that? They would have been probably, once you get out of, I think my dad, talking with him, I think there was something that was on purpose of, it was not, it was never a feeling of like, hey, you're going to enter the family business, like learn the family business and you're going to come enter the family business. My brothers, my two oldest brothers and my brother-in-law, they went and worked other jobs for, 4 or 5 years outside of college, graduating, going and working, developing skills, and then, eventually took pay cuts to come work for the family company. But with this, you could future turn into, purchasing ownership of it and things like that. So there was probably there was never hey, come in, you got to learn the business. So then, and I would have been into, so that was definitely on purpose. In high school, that's probably when I really started to go, I started a landscaping company and would hire my buddies, and just like being an entrepreneur going, I could work at Dairy Queen, or I could mow lawns and hand out flyers and do this. And, I wonder if my dad would, I wonder if I could meet with their property manager and see if I could win the bid at their site.
Sure.
And doing that. So it was never forced. And I probably wasn't as curious as I maybe wished I would be early on. Like, who owns this building? What does that mean? You own the building and rent from, I wasn't asking those questions until later.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. I your brothers went out and did other work before they came back. And I found in the conversations I've had thus far that seems to be one of the more, I don't think successful is the right word, one of the easiest ways to make that transition run more smoothly is somebody goes out and they go do their own job, they go see what the world is like, then come back and work at the family business. Because when it's forced upon people, it doesn't seem to have gone as well or feel as smooth. So I do want to ask about your landscaping. I got a big old asterisk next to that. So in high school, you said you started a landscaping company. So what did that look like? What gave you that idea to starting a company besides just, I don't want to work at Dairy Queen?
Yeah. I would have seen one of my older brothers, when he was a senior in high school, or maybe when he was in college, him and a buddy did like, hey, we'll do yard work or help you move stuff or something. I saw a flyer that he had. And then I had a buddy in high school that we knew he had a riding lawnmower at home. I was driving had the chance to drive kind of a beat up Suburban. And then we bought a trailer, I think put some money together and went and bought a big wooden trailer. And we were like, let's pass out flyers. And I think he knew two neighbors that wanted us to mow already. And we're like, let's just put on a piece of paper that we do mulch, edging, patios, mowing, fertilizing, put everything, and do a little slogan like, we'll do the hard work so you don't have to, or, something like that. And went and handed out a bunch of flyers. No one told us to do that. It was just like, thinking how should we do this? And then, it was fun to get a call and go bid the job and figure out, how do you bid a mulch job, and how do we make more money than if we say it's $20 an hour per guy? So that's bidding jobs. And how do we work a deal with the mulch shop, and the landscape shop that, we can save 15% on everything that we buy, but then we can charge them the normal rate. And just like developing a business that way. And I think both of our parents were gracious in allowing us to use they were obviously gracious in allowing us to use the mower and the truck. But that wouldn't have, I don't remember either of our dads or moms being like, you guys should do this, or how are you marketing? You should market this way. I think I'm more remember filling my dad in like, yeah, today I mowed 10 lawns and did this. And not like he was critiquing our business strategy.
Yeah.
He probably
That's
could
awesome.
have.
As I'm looking now, yeah, well, with what he's done, yeah. I'm looking now at starting with the boys and doing different things with the kids. And, I want like the intentional involvement, but I love that your parents just kind of, hey, you go run your stuff, go do your thing, and go out. I mean, granted, my kids are 9 and 5, so there's only so much that they'd be able to do.
Yeah.
They can't even ride the riding lawnmower right now. They don't have enough weight to hold the sensor down to be able to move our riding lawnmower. But the concepts, the ideas, and the fact that you were running around doing all of that. So how many? You said you brought in a couple of your friends. How many? I'm going to call them employees for the purpose of this thing, but employees / partnerships. How many did you have? How many people did you have working with you?
So it was me and my buddy, and then we would have it would have been job dependent. So if we had,
okay,
because
so a lot of our friends that stops in front of Home Depot and picks up the guys out there looking for daytime jobs. Yeah. Is that what you were doing?
Yeah. So some jobs it was like, hey, this is a big, let's get 4 guys for the day and come do this one. Or it was I remember getting a couple big, sodding jobs, and that was like, for a full weekend, and we had 4 or 5 guys come, mm-hmm. and you're kind of going, oh, if we do it that, like each of us would make. That's like we're making a lot of money per hour, and kind of doing that. So it was later into early college would have been when it was kind of first full-time employee of like, and that was a buddy of ours, and that was more like you're promised, your 40 hours a week kind of thing.
Okay.
Otherwise, it was first the 2 of us, and then one of my brothers and another buddy added on. So we kind of for 1 year had 4 of us owners of the business to kind of split duties, and then 2 of them went away, and eventually my one initial buddy moved. So in the later years of college, it was just me running it.
Okay. Man, so did you start? What grade did you start doing this in? You said high school, but what grade?
What I remember 10th grade would have done where I handed out flyers and was doing like weeding people's lawns.
Okay.
Basically, that's what we do for $13 an hour.
But it's pretty solid money for then.
Yeah.
I wish that I was making $13 an hour when I was in 10th grade.
Yeah. So that was a different buddy. Then junior year is the buddy with the riding lawnmower that we teamed up. So that would have been junior year of high school. So I'd go to my baseball practices, head home, go to baseball practice. I have a big trailer and lawnmower on there. School.
So it's all the way to college then, you said, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, so that's 6 years of doing this, right? So 11th and 12th grade, and then the 4 years of college, just going to town. Now, you met your wife in high school. When did you guys start dating?
Started dating junior year.
Okay.
So
she's been with you on that entire train, right? So she was with you while you were out doing the craziness of balancing baseball, high school, and the yards, and then right into college and the same exact stuff. What was her thought on all of this? When did she ever get mad at you saying, are we ever going to, I don't know, go watch a movie together and go on a date? Or, like what did she think about all this?
Yeah, good question. I don't remember really having too many conversations about it. But I do, I mean, we'd go on, like, it was fun to go on dates and to be like, I'm paying for us. And, cause it was nice to have, not ever feel like I needed to ask my parents for money, and I have extra spending money and, do that. But I can't remember, I'm sure she made plenty of comments that are like, come on, Saturday, like I thought we were going to do something fun, not work all day.
Yeah. Does she still say those comments years later?
Yes, but having she's great about it. I mean, I wouldn't be able to be in real estate, if she didn't first give the approval of it. But having kids, as you know, it's a whole new ball game.
No, I don't know at all. I leave them all alone. I don't have anything to do with my kids. My wife does all that. So
it seems like you have no relationship with your kids. So
nope, zero relationship with my kids. I get the stank eye from the little one over here.
Yeah.
Why are you giving me that stank? Oh, he just threw Play-Doh at me. Golly. Yeah, see, that's the relationship I have with my kids. I just get smacked in the face with Play-Doh. Yeah. Man, oh man, I'm glad I got a beard to bounce it off of.
The growing up, my parents, I don't know what you do, but it'd be curious to hear your thoughts on it. But they would do allowance. So every 2 weeks, we'd all get $60. So we would call it payday. Like, hey, it's payday today. And get allowance. That was our, we always purchase presents for, I saw something fly across the screen.
Yeah. There's another piece of Play-Doh flying by. Yeah. He's going to get pelted in the conversation.
Yeah. We'd always, if we were going to a movie, we're paying to go. Obviously, that started with money that parents would give us for allowance. If we were doing an oil change or gas or this, like that was all. It's not like we were grabbing the credit card or getting money from my parents or something like that. So that was a good way to train that money's a real,
for sure.
It's a real thing. And when it's your brother's birthday, you buy him a $30 gift. And, when it's Mother's Day, you don't just sit back, you go purchase a gift and learn things. You do an oil change. Dad doesn't hop in your car and go do the oil change. Learn how much that costs. So that was good. What are your thoughts on that?
My thoughts are I keep getting pelted with clay, but I'd say that I think that I like the structure behind that. I've been I don't think I want to do allowance with the kids. I want them to be able to earn some money. I want to be able to start a business with them and they get to see it. But the fact that you had structure that was built into that, I think makes a huge difference of like, hey, like we're giving you allowance, but we're teaching you money management with the allowance, not that money grows on trees, that, you're earning this money by being a productive member of the family. And then you use said money to buy gifts and do all that stuff because your parents are going to end up buying gifts anyway. So now, instead of buying a gift, oh, well, this one's from Lars to your brother, now it's just, no, like you have the money. You're going to go do it because they're going to buy the gift anyway. Now you're teaching money management. So I like the concept behind that in applying that with the kids. Like with me, I still don't know entirely what the plan is as far as I don't plan to do allowance, but I do plan to do a lot of money management and a lot of like business talk and that type of stuff. It's one of the reasons I started doing the homeschool weekend. Okay, buddy, no more, you little rascal. So that you're supposed to be writing your papers. Do your paper. You're not trying to do anything. You're pelting me with clay. Golly. So I do want to teach, money management and business and all that type of stuff. So that's going to definitely be on the docket. So they'll receive money. How they receive it, I don't know entirely yet, right? Yeah. So, they'll receive some from the businesses because they're going to be a part of them, and I want to help them earn a paycheck in that front, and say, hey, this is how a paycheck is earned. This is how a business is built. This is where the money comes. Ooh, boy, we just had a maintenance problem come in. Now we're going to have to take money out of our piggy bank, out of our savings account to fix the problem that just came up. Those are the things that we'll split up and go through. But are you planning to do the same thing that happened with you as growing up, or have you and your wife talked about what you want to do for allowance or all of that?
No, I mean, we haven't decided, and it wouldn't be nailed down. It would be definitely, I will encourage I think it was in me to ask, to vacuum cars and get my siblings to pay me some money to vacuum their car, to do, to clean meticulously, do a deep house clean. And that turned into, $20 getting some, money when I'm 10 years old. So it was always like, that was in me. So I'll just encourage, I mean, just like you, it could be partnering in a bit, giving them money to start a little business or to, buy a lawnmower. I think the manual labor stuff is really cool learning lesson. At least it was for me. So probably something that has to do with that, or helping a handyman type, position, or something where they can learn some hands-on, how houses work and things like that. And then the allowance. Yeah. If I did that, it'd be like, hey, we're, if you need a new pair of shoes, that's what you're using that money for, and doing that. Cause a big, being a generation after when I was growing up, it was like we're using hand me down. It wasn't like we're buying the fanciest things or whatever. I don't think it was, we were in the position to have my parents do that when I was young. As time went on, and, the business was doing better and better. And then being in a, generation of like where we're in a good financial position, with the skills that I've had and been in real estate, like is definitely an internal worry of mine going, how do we have kids that are motivated and, aren't just given things, aren't promised that they're going to get money when we're gone. Big questions there. So that's definitely something that I will take very, very seriously as our kids get a little bit older, past 3 years old, to go like, hey, whenever I want something, whenever it's baseball, I always get the new baseball glove. There's part of it that would be like, that would be easier to do that. It'd be easier to just go buy the new thing, but, or it'd be easier to always have someone come and mow the lawn, or are they going to see dad out there mowing the lawn so those are all thoughts I'm just kind of externally processing, as time goes on. I'm going to be taking it very seriously, how we, what our kids see kind of thing, and what they're just given versus what they need to earn, and all of that.
Did you and your wife have any conversations about how you wanted to raise your kids before you got married or before you started having kids?
We probably did. Nothing that was, I feel like we just would have, at that point, been together for a very long time, like growing up with each other almost, because we were 15 when we first started having a crush on each other. And she comes from a very different background. Her mom is great. Her parents split up when she was little. Her mom is has just been a rock for her, and her dad hasn't made a lot of great choices, but she's always, I think our relationship's just been, we're pursuing the Lord individually, and we really like each other, and we're different from each other, but it's like opposites attract kind of thing. And having kids, we definitely talked about, what are they gonna, how we're gonna be parents to them, what's gonna be most important. Are we gonna want to travel as a family? Are we gonna want to more, focus on experiences together, or buying fancy things, or, things like that. But it gets more serious once the kids start actually coming, and then you're like, for okay. Sure. Yeah. Now we're deciding what's going on.
The intentionality becomes a requirement as opposed to a preparation, right? So when there's a difference between intentionally preparing and intentionally executing, right? Because you're in the middle of the execution, and it's just time to make it happen. I'm curious, you said that your wife's dad wasn't, really around much, wasn't really involved that type of way, a very involved dad. What kind of conversations has that led to for how how she expects you to show up as a dad, or maybe it's just, how have you taken that on if you haven't had the conversations? Because there's a difference between, who was I listening to? I was just listening. It was either this morning or yesterday. Maybe it was yesterday. I don't remember, but I was listening to somebody and they were talking about how the problem is not necessarily in the words. The problem is in the pictures, right? So when, and I wish I could remember who it was that the conversation was with. It was a doctor that used to be on with Dave Ramsey. So there was a doctor that used to be on there that he used to talk. He's got tattoos, big guy. But he has his own program now, and it was, I think, when he was talking to the Iced Coffee Hour. So if anybody wants to go back and listen to it, I want to say that's where it was that I was listening to. But anyways, going back to it, he was like, look, when I looked at my wife and she was like, hey, it's Monday. She looks at me and says, hey, like, can't wait for this wonderful, hot, steamy date we're going on Friday. And like the whole week, my brain is like playing it all out. I can't wait to go on this date. It's going to be wonderful. Like, we're just going to do this. I'm like, and then Friday comes around. I get home from work. I take a shower, put a suit on. I am ready to go for that. Like, she gave me that wink and everything at the end of it. And then I walk out and she's in PT gear, like ready to go work out. And I'm like, what are you doing? She's like, what are you doing? And he's like, no, I was ready for our real hot date. I'm like, yeah, we're supposed to go running this afternoon. I want to, like, and it's like, okay, well, the picture I had in my head of what she said is different than the picture she had in her head of what she said. Right. So I'm saying all that to go back to like the picture you may have in your head about what it means to be a good dad juxtaposed against who your dad was, and the picture she has in her head of what it means for you to be a good dad with the picture of her dad in her head. We have to make sure that we're super clear in our conversations with each other, that we're actually putting forth what our spouse thinks is and what I think is together the representation of a good dad. So long story to get around to, like, what kind of, have you guys had any conversations about what it means to be a good dad besides like, hey, obviously, striving to represent the Lord in your house. What does that look like for you guys?
Yeah, great question. And that's very true. We tend to picture different things in our mind and each person's not going to have the same picture. I'm as guilty as almost every day of that. I
think we all are. Yes.
Yeah. And this is, I'll also preface this by saying, like, as time goes on, our relation, we've been married for 6+ years, like, it's just so far from doing things perfectly. So, like, I can fall into passive, like my theme of last year was reject passivity. That's in all aspects of life. Like, just don't be passive. Don't just be going with the flow. Like, be intentionally pursuing your wife, pursuing your kids, growing your business, growing relation, just don't be passive. Don't be a passive man. There's way too many passive men already on earth that we don't need to be too. I tend to fall with having kids. I can fall into being a passive husband, of pursuing that relationship. In my mind, the most important relationship outside of my relationship with God is not with my kids. It is with my wife. My kids, it's a huge it's like a hard thing, because if I pursue my wife, that could look like weekly date nights, or having, for us, it's trying to get away for 5 to 7 days, a stretch without our kids each year. And that can be like, it's hard to leave the kids, but there's nothing more healthy for our kids, in my opinion, than if mom and dad have a good relationship to show that, which is so easy to fall into. And I'm guilty of it, falling into like, how can we tend to our kids' needs the most, versus tending to my wife's needs. I'm also figuring out what role in our relationship her dad plays, because her dad was absent, went down a a criminal kind of path from when she was a young, with addiction and various things from when she was 4 years old. So I was the high schooler. I got to, I saw what it was, where I was at Nicole's house, and it's a Friday night, and her mom is upstairs, and we're in the basement, and we're watching a show, and I would have to I would play out, man, that is so unfair that she doesn't have a dad that's there for her to protect her. So it's like I would always try to treat her like her dad's about to walk down the stairs, or her dad is a fly on the wall, or something, because it's like she deserves that. But it has to play a toll, like it has to play a role of the classic term, daddy issues. Nicole's extremely strong, but there has to be. We're made to have two parents, a father and a mom, and other people can step into those.
It's 2024. You're not allowed to say that anymore. No.
Someone else can step into the roles.
That's ridiculous.
So that plays a role. So now going into it, I think one of the biggest ways it manifests itself is she wants time. So she wants dad time with the kids, time with her and the kids. Less of where I can sometimes get into the teamwork. Hey, this is teamwork. I'll take them. You go, do something, and then, vice versa. And, versus like, hey, we're just all spending time together. And she can fall into the, like, that I don't spend tons of time with them. I have to remind her, like, I have the most flexible job. Like I don't work late. I'm with them 2 hours in the morning, kind of for slow mornings. Like I see them, I'm with them on the week. Like I'm far from an absent dad, but she could feel like that because I think just wants more and more dad time with the kids, probably from a root of she didn't have a dad. And that's what, you're going to miss steps, just probably like her dad missed all of her steps.
Yeah. Yeah, no kidding. That would be, I could not imagine being stuck in that situation for her, and I would definitely, and I'm not saying you guys haven't, but encourage a lot of communication around that, a lot, to make sure that there's that back and forth, and I was going to ask my son, but he just walked out, but I always tell my kids, like, it goes, God, your mom, then you guys. If I'm not putting God first, then I'm not going to be able to take care of your mom. If I'm not taking care of your mom, then I'm not going to be able to take care of you guys. Like, at first it was like, why am I number 3, Dad? Now I've got 3 kids, right? So now all 3 of them are 3, right? But, before it was like, why am I number 3? And it's like, well, like that, like who came first? God came first to begin with. And then he gave me my wife. And now my wife gave me you guys, right? So, and after you guys are out of the house, guess who I'm still stuck in this house with? Your mom. So we don't want to keep that super strong, exactly. And that's where it's crazy how many divorces happen after the kids leave the house, because they're empty nesters and they've become roommates instead of, husband. To your point, having those, it was funny because when you were saying that, trying to get those 5 to 7 days, when you hit the 5 to 7, I was thinking to myself, because you have 3 kids that are 3 and under, 5 to 7 minutes just to yourself. Literally in my brain, I was like 5 to 7 minutes, and you were like 5 to 7 days. Just then I was like, oh golly, that's striving for a lot there. But at the same point, you need to, right? You need to be able to strive for that. I've got on my goal sheet this year of 2 overnights with my wife, right? And I'm not like overstretching. She's still in the Air Force, so there's still a lot of work that she's doing on that front, and as we're pushing forward on it. But it's like, no, I just need those overnights with my wife to be able to settle down, have it be just her and I. Those date nights we need to have back again, even if they're date lunches. I don't care. I just need to go date my wife a little bit, and it has to be there.
Yeah,
but I would.
Oh no, you go
ahead. No, I said you go.
I'll go. The date nights are, so we do a weekly date night that comes with, we have a great babysitter that is trustworthy to put the kids down. So
Is that called
obviously
grandpa?
we bring the 3-month-old. What'd you say?
I said, is that called grandma or grandpa?
No, it's not. It actually, the first time we
Okay.
paid someone, so they help. We have family close. Like Nicole's mom is close. My parents are 10 minutes away. So it's like, it takes a community to, I don't know what we'd do if we live 2 doors down from my sister as well. So sometimes like, hey, Cruz, head over to their house. Go play with your cousins.
Nice.
But the date night is every date night. Sometimes we don't feel like we need it, but it's also like, in my mind, that's a way healthier place to be because then months will go by and it's like, we've been seeing each other, hour and a half once a week at least, uninterrupted, we're grabbing dinner. Are all those conversations like life-changing? No, but it's like, how's your day going? How's the week? Like, what else and we chat about something random. You're catching up with the conversation you had at church or with a friend, and it's like if the habit building over a year, every one of those little blocks,
sure.
Man, that's a strong, even though it didn't feel like life-changing, when you add, 50 of those days up, it was life-changing because we're still friends. We're still laughing. That wouldn't be we just skipped one this week because I coached baseball last night, and it was like, it's really easy to skip, and we could just keep skipping it. And then all of a sudden it's just a habit that you're like, I believe in that habit.
Yeah.
That's been a really good staple for us.
Yeah, my wife and I used to do it once a week, no problem. Have our date nights, even when we were both in the military before we had kids. And then all of a sudden you start having kids, and then you move to Japan, and then you have more kids, and you're all over the place. And it's like that's how you go down that route. Is you let it slip once or twice, and then before you know it, you haven't had a date night in forever. So now we definitely need to pick that up. My wife and I, again, we need to pick that up, and it's well needed. It's funny because like now when we go on a date, it seems like we go on a date, like we're gone for like 3-4 hours.
Yeah.
And my son just commented on it the other day. He was like, why would you guys go on a date? Are you guys gone forever? And I'm like, well, because we never get to go on dates anymore. Yeah. So like we're making up for lost time, right? So like the last like big date we went on, we went to we went and got massages, and then we went out to dinner at Ruth's Chris. And we just sat there and we like ordered these 2 massive tomahawk steaks, and we just sat there and enjoyed time together. We were gone for a few hours. I was like, this is great, man. Oh man, this is awesome. My son is like, where's dad? Where's mom? Like what's going on? But that's part of, having to be, I have to go date my wife more often, just, it's a requirement. It's got to be there. And, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say this. Our kids, at first it was hard to go because they'd be crying when we were leaving. And now it's like, okay, bye. Oh, Ava's here. Bye, Mom and Dad. You guys can go.
Nice. Yeah.
Just getting in.
That's great. And that's the way it should be, right? Because if they're used to knowing that's just what it is, then hopefully they can apply that when they grow up as well. Of like, okay, well, I need to date my spouse. Like that's what my dad did. That's what my mom. This makes sense to me. That's the way then to thrive and to be in a relationship is knowing that that's what you should be doing. And that's what I try to tell my boys all the time. And I'm not even going to ask him, because every time I ask my son to answer a question on the podcast, he just looks at me like I'm silly. He's like, I don't know what you talk about, Dad. I'm like, we talk about this all the time. But so I'm not even going to ask him, little punk. But like, I always tell him, I said, what's my goal? And he's like, to raise better men than you. I'm like, you're darn right. Like, if my goal is for you to be a better man than me and represent what that means to be a better man. And for my daughter, it's going to be to represent what it means to be to find a better man than me, right? If she can marry a better man than me, then I'm on the right track. And, one thing you said there that I really loved earlier was that, even in high school, by the sounds of things, you'd be sitting there going, man, it's really not fair that my wife doesn't have a dad at home. And the importance of having a father there is unreal, because if it was another man that did not have the integrity that you had, did not have the thought process you have, would be a unbelievably different outcome for your wife on what was going on in that basement instead of watching TV, or what trouble could have been going on. And I think that's unbelievably important. There were some jokes thrown about, because my sons are rather handsome, unlike their father. Thankfully, they get better genes from their mom's side, but so they're rather handsome dudes, right? And somebody was like, "Oh man, like you're going to be, beating the girls away with a stick," And I was like, "Not a chance." I was like, the dads on the other end are going to be proud, to have my sons as son-in-laws, sons-in-law, right? And that's the way that I want to raise them, is that whoever you're going to marry, that dad is unbelievably proud that you're the one marrying them.
Wow, that is cool.
And it's awesome to have heard you say that, because it's like, man, that's the way I want my sons to be thinking when they're with their girlfriends, even in high school, is respecting that and honoring that. So I want to say congrats to you, and respect and honor you in that way of saying good on you. And I'm not saying by any means that you've made no mistakes, and I don't everybody makes mistakes and does things that they shouldn't.
Totally.
But man, oh man, just to have that in your brain and have that in your thoughts is phenomenal.
Totally.
And I completely respect that, and I love it. And now I know why you guys are high school sweethearts, because that's the way your brain was working then. When I was in high school, I didn't even like dating. I thought it was silly. I was like, I'm not going to marry any of these women. And that's the way my brain was. I wanted to be a dad since I was like 13 years old. So here I am in high school. I'm like, I'm not going to marry any of these girls. Like, I'm going off to the military. Like, this doesn't even make any sense. Like, I'm not, no. And the only time I really tried, it was worthless anyway. So I was like, done, moving on. And like, I just found it to be a waste of time. So as you are now raising children, you've got 3 kiddos. Obviously, they're young, but how are you picturing yourself kind of being that representative inside the house? Like, what are you telling yourself, and how are you coaching yourself, or who are you going to for coaching? However it is that you want to answer this question, for knowing that you're representing the family well, that you are raising the kids right, that you are being the proper figurehead in your house.
I think it starts with, for me, it's like the person I can control is myself. So what do my habits look like? It's like each stage in life, from high school to college to having a real job to married to then kids. It's like the efficiency in some aspects need to get tightened up, or just you just have less time to mess around with. So it's not necessarily. So for me, it's like, it's my mornings. It's, will my kids see me waking up, before them, getting into the Word? Will they hear me praying? Will they see me? I picture coming down the stairs and seeing my dad at the table with his cereal, reading the Bible, and that was just a staple. And it was like, that was, sometimes I probably thought about it, sometimes I probably didn't, but then you zoom out, and then you're all of a sudden, 23 years old and going, wow, that was, that's how my dad was, just grounded. He was in that. So for me, as being grounded, it's having them see, that I'm keeping a healthy body. So my mornings are really like working out, sauna, getting in the Word, and being able to pray. And then so I kind of go, that's a great start. Like, we're moving in the right direction if we just kind of keep those things as staples. And those I can control, because I'm waking up before the family's waking up. Once the family wakes up and everything else starts, as you know, you get less control over your time. And then for me right now, full transparency, we got, so 3-month-old. So we're coming out of like dark cloud of fog being in with the older two aren't self-sufficient in doing stuff. So they're not, so you have, they're still full, of course, tantrums, or they want to be held. And it's like, you can't hold three people and you can't hold two people and a crying baby. So we're like, our house, there was some construction going on. I started coaching baseball, which was, it was just a big time commitment for 3 months. Work's been picking up even more so just with it being springtime in the real estate market. And then a 3-month-old and these other two. So it's like, it's a lot of stuff that it's been like a lot of days of like, hey, we're not thriving. We're definitely not thriving, but we are.
Yeah, for sure.
We're surviving. There's maybe moments to savor. And then a lot of it's just like, we just got to get to tomorrow. We're in a tough spot. And getting help from people. So we're coming out of that. So that's very real. And then we get to where we have a 6-month-old and you kind of forget about some of those early months. The other thing I would say is being with my kids, it's being intentional to, like, Cruz is 3 years old. So if he hits someone at a play date, it's like, it's easiest to distract and just move on. Or do you take the intentional parenting route, and actually go talk to them and kind of go, hey, that's, you can continue to, if you're going to continue, we need to remove you because it's not fun to be around, little boys that are hitting their friends. But that takes effort. You're not always like pumped to have those conversations. But for me, is like just trying to stay on the intentional side of teaching lessons. Obviously, he can't contemplate everything, so we're not going to get super deep, but we are going to try to start to understand that you can't keep doing that. Otherwise, you're not going to have, people aren't going to want to hang out with you. And it's going to be a problem. It's going to be a problem if you keep doing that, or we can't just have tantrums and do this all the time, or we need to actually physically remove you and get in a different space so you can tantrum there. Those, you maybe don't have anyone in the tantrum stage right now.
No, not tantrum. No, not really.
Where there's no
I'm in between.
No control over what's going on.
I'm in between on that one, thankfully.
So then I would say moving forward, that will just turn into, if he's, how do we, constant reminders of, who did you talk to at school today that doesn't have other, friends? Who did you go out of your way to sit by at lunch today? Just like trying to have those conversations will be the best way that I know how to, and then talk to people like you and be like, your kids are in this stage? Like, what did you do when they were this age? And try to pick some stuff from people that have gone before you.
That was the whole purpose of me starting this podcast, was to steal ideas from others. Like, if I can steal as many good ideas as I can, then I'm going to do it. Hopefully somebody else that's listening gets a good idea as well. But, my whole intent is to steal ideas to be a better dad and a better business owner, because it's exhausting, right? I mean, it's thankfully, I've got a 9-year-old who's pretty self-sufficient. He can, I would never do this, but I could leave for a weekend and he'd be fine, right? He would make all the food that he needs to. He'd be able to, he'd set himself up. He'd probably still do some of his homework, and he would know how to do it. Like, he'd cover himself. At 9 years old, obviously would never do that, but he's fully capable of he'll make his own eggs, make his own pancakes. He's all set. Like, got it, Dad. No big deal. As long as there's food in there, he'll take care of it. But obviously, I've got Diana, who's, as we're recording this, she turns 1 in 2 days, right? So it's like, she's obviously, geez, it reminded me of this terrible story I heard. All that afterwards. But, she's like clearly not capable of like doing her own stuff, right? It's asinine to me. But it's the part that's asinine is what's still going on in my brain. There was this, and I've got to get the story out because I can't, my brain can't get past it. So this was a while ago that this happened, but this lady went on a 10-day vacation with her boyfriend to Puerto Rico, and then stopped in Detroit and a couple other places. Left her 18-month-old kid at home all by himself with a couple bottles of crib, and then just took vacation for 10 days.
Oh.
Shockingly, she returned home to a deceased baby. What do you know? You know, and then like the neighbors, because it's an apartment, they can hear the baby like crying and screaming on the neighbor's like Ring telephone thing. And, you know, nobody knows, obviously. I mean, if kids cry, that's just what they do, right? So nobody knows what's going on the other side of that door. But as I'm telling the story about my little lady, just, you know, hanging out, my little 1-year-old, I was like, that came in my brain. So it was hard to get past that mentally. But like, I could not imagine the thought process one would have to do that. But goodness gracious, boy, did I just bring this to a much darker place. Like, we were all happy and talking about fun stuff, but you know, in my previous life, I saw a lot of terrible, terrible things, and that was one thing that it's made me very guarded in how I communicate about the kids, how I communicate with the kids, how I look at other people as parents, how I assess people as I'm walking around. Dealing with some of the darkest of the dark. I mean, my buddy and I ran, I was not one of the lead agents on it, but a case on a double murder where a guy killed his fiance and unborn child. She was 8 months pregnant. He killed them both. And I was like, what darkness in the world? And, you know, running a bunch of, you know, child sex cases and various other different stuff. And now like it's just altered my world so much in how I look at things, which I think is both good and bad, right? It's good in so much that I know the hurt and pain that kids have out there, and I never want my kids to ever feel any sort of even remotely close to that sort of pain. I want them to know that there's darkness out there. Like I don't hide darkness from my kids. They know, you know, especially my 9-year-old, my 5-year-old, you know, he's still of the mind that like, and this is slightly tongue in cheek, but if I died tomorrow, he would be of the mind of, it's okay, I'm going to see him in heaven. You know, and that's, you know, it's a blessing that, you know, he's at an age where he thinks that way, but also, you know, he knows that there's heaven, he knows that there's hell, he knows that darkness is out there. My 9-year-old is very aware and asks a lot of questions, and it's like, this is unreal what you see out there. But man, oh man, that my brain went down a very a dark path traveled on that one. So
I mean, that's like, how do you combat that? And it starts with home. I mean, there's if someone feels led to go and, you know, make it their thing to be on a mission and solve, you know, these issues, but it first starts with in your house, you know, you know, home base. Before it's like, put on your mask before you go, like, take care of yourself, husband and wife, kids, family. And then from there, you know, be in a place to also go, like, do you think about even in your community running this podcast and talking to people, do you just have an eye for like, hey, that person doesn't have a father figure in their life. Maybe even they don't have a dad. And is that something that you find yourself being more aware of and having a heart for those kids? It could be a sports team that your son is on or something like that. Do you find yourself doing that and then having a heart for those kids and wanting to in any way take, you know, be a light to them?
I do, and I tend to see when there is. I can almost pick up, and it's not foolproof by any means, but you can almost pick up when a child doesn't have a dad at home, even if you have no idea whether or not they do, just by the way they act, by what they seem to be seeking for. Right. Yep. Or the lack of stability they have, you know, even if they have a dad at home, like you can almost guarantee that it's not a present father who's involved and who's teaching and who's guiding. And that's one of those things that on the flip side of that is, you know, I forgot which one of the many child sex predators that are out there, but talked about that. Like when he was grooming children, that's what he would look for. He would ask questions, understand who's going on and what, and be involved in various things, find out which kid has a present dad at home and which kid doesn't. And he would steer very clear from the ones who have a dad at home, because guess who's going to be there 9 times out of 10 if something's going south? Dad, right? And if dad's at home, that's a threat to him. That's a threat to the child sex predator if dad is at home. And so, when I see that, it's like, man, it breaks my heart. And not to mention, like, we already have enough problems, if you ask me, of a lack of masculinity. Not this toxic nonsense masculinity people talk about, but a lack of masculinity in this world, where true masculinity, not like, check out my Bugatti from Daggum Andrew Tate, not masculinity, right? That's not what I'm talking about. That's toxic garbage. What I'm talking about, masculinity, true leadership, true, biblical masculinity. Like, what does it mean to actually be a leader? What does it mean to actually protect and to take care of people? Not like, you're going to follow me because you're behind me. No, that's not what I'm talking about either. So we have such a lack of it because it's been beaten out of people, figuratively and literally. And we've let the government become dad in so many cases that now we don't have the masculine figures that we need. So, I tend to see it a lot, and it drives me bonkers because there's only so much I could do, so if I could talk to more dads, or if more dads can hear what it means to be a present dad and hear that, just because my dad wasn't there doesn't mean that I can't be there for my kids. If we could talk about this more often so people hear it and jump out and do something, like, to me, that's one of the things I love about this podcast and my ability to be able to talk about being a dad is hopefully have that reach. Because, and I want to rewind a minute too, but when you were talking about, putting your own mask on, it was one of those that when I was in the military, you saw a lot of dudes that are phenomenal men, but they're not dads, right? They weren't there with their kids because they were too busy out doing the mission and taking care of things that they forget about the mission at home, which is another thing I did not want to do. That's why I left the military, and that's why I started this podcast, because I could see dads in entrepreneurship doing the same daggum thing. And it was like, golly, how can we make sure that dads are present? Like, why? Like, how do we make sure that happens? And I don't know if it's ever a foolproof way, but I'm going to try to do my part as much as I can.
Yeah, that is, this is so great to have. I mean, you're putting together all these conversations, and I could see you, and I could see you sharing with your sons' dads, ones that you know well or don't know, and be like, maybe you do, but hey, got this podcast, would love for you to listen, and just call the community dads higher. Is that something, would everyone know that you have a podcast? A Biz Dads podcast.
I talk about it, but definitely everybody. I wouldn't say everybody. I should push it out a little bit more. It's one of those that I almost hate self-promotion. It's really weird for me. I got to get comfortable with it because if I want to make an impact, then I should be totally fine with self-promotion, right? But no, like a lot of his golf dads, when we're at golf, they know, like, I've talked to them about, what I do, and hopefully they go and listen to it and, keep growing the followership. But,
Well, it's like, I mean, your sales pitch is you're doing it for yourself. I mean, you're doing it to talk to all these dads to take something from it. So it's like, listen to that. I mean, there's people on here, like, you're not doing it to, you're not raising a fund at the end. Actually, I don't know if you're going to at the end, but you're not raising a fund for, this is a multifamily fund. it's to
Zero.
learn from, dads. So it should be hey, there's a lot of passivity when it comes to, being fathers and what that means. And so a bunch of dudes from around the country are chatting about it. It's pretty sweet.
Yeah. And I've been excited about how many dads are wanting to do this and be involved. So you're right. Yeah. It is pretty sweet. I love it. So.
Yeah. Question for you. You have a 1-year-old daughter, almost 1-year-old. What's it like having what's it been like for you having a daughter versus the 2 boys?
Thus far, well, I will say the change in diapers was a drastic change. Like, drastic change. Like, my brother-in-law started off with 2 girls and then had a boy for their third, and we started off with 2 boys and a girl. And he was like, these boys' diapers are so much harder. I'm like, you're out of your mind. Like, you're out of your mind. Girls' diapers are ridiculously harder to change, you know? But my daughter is she's so sweet and she's so tiny, you know, like she's not way smaller. She's a lot smaller than the other two. It was funny because, do you know Marcio, GoBro?
I haven't met him, but I know the name.
So he's got a 4-month-old boy, and we were just at a get together here this past weekend, and his 4-month-old boy is bigger than my 1-year-old daughter, right? Okay. Like it's ridiculous. Like one of the appointments, I think it was my daughter's 6-month appointment, they had to remember. They were like, let me double check. And then she was like a half an inch taller than their initial measurement. They're like, okay, we're good now. Like she fits within the range that we'd be concerned about. I was like, what? Like she's tiny. And, but she's just got such a warm heart. She's so smiley all the time. And I mean, all of my kids have been. So I wouldn't say that it's much different in that sense. I'm imagining the older she gets, as she continues to grow, you know, it's going to be drastically different. Just that soft spot that I'm going to have for my little girl, as opposed to, you know, my two boys. Like shortly before this call, I was in fighting my boys like for 30 minutes a day, 3 times a week. In the middle of the day, I go and do whatever the kids want to do. Okay. Today they wanted to go jump in the pool, and I was like, dude, I got to go get on a podcast like right after this. I can't go jump in the pool because that doesn't give me time to get cleaned up and shake my beard out before I jump on a podcast. So instead we wrestled in the playroom. So they were like jumping on me and flipping on top of me and all sorts of craziness. So I hope that my daughter wants to do that stuff too. I don't know, but time will tell, because, you know, my wife is not at all a girly girl. So if we end up with a girly girl, I think both of us are going to be really hurting and going, I don't know what to do with this right now. But yeah, a very long answer to your short question.
No, that's it's just fun to, I mean, it's different being a girl dad versus boys. And so it's fun to hear you talk about it.
I'm looking forward to hearing more as your kids grow up, with the girl being in the middle, how that dynamic ends up working out, you know? Because like both of my boys are already ready to protect, you know? Yeah. They're ready to go. We're older brothers. All right. I wear that badge with honor. Who do I punch first? You know, like they're ready to go. Like it's going to be interesting as they grow up.
Our 3-year-old, he must be hearing what I do. He's starting to pick up on what he's calling his sister and stuff. So the other day, we're waking up his sister Josie from a nap, and so he's opening the door before me, and he goes, "Is there a princess sleeping in here? Is there a princess sleeping in here?" You know, because he hears me say that, and then he'll sometimes go, and he kind of beats up on her, but now she's just starting to, you know, push back a little bit. And it's just like super fun to watch. But then he'll kind of drop the occasional, like, "Here you go, princess. Here's this."
That sounds like my boys for sure.
That's fun to. It'll be fun to, see him interact. But secretly, deep down, is like when she stands up for herself to him. Then it's like, yes. Like, let's go.
Yeah. Yeah. My boys are starting jujitsu, and it's I told them when we first found out it was a girl, I was like, all right, boys, I'm putting you in jujitsu because they put daddies in jail, but they don't put big brothers in jail. So it's going to be your guys' job to take care of her, you know? And they're like, all right, you know, it's game on. So, but I'm pretty sure she's going to want to do jujitsu too. If she's anything like her brothers, like even if she wants to wear a tutu, I totally still see her like in the backyard riding the dirt bike with a tutu on. Like I don't know, like inside this household, I just think that's what's going to happen. But I want to pivot a little bit. We haven't really talked much about the business side of the house, which again, I never know where these are going to go, but I love the dad stuff for sure. But let me go to the business side and kind of say, I want to bring the kids into it though, but when you were talking about growing up, you were not really all that privy of in your dad's business, but it sounded like it was almost intentional. What is kind of your view and your wife's view on how, if you guys have even had these conversations, on if or how you would want to involve or expose your children to the business?
Yeah, we haven't had a ton of conversations on it, but I think we'll want to expose them to what's going on. I think we didn't have rental. When you have rental properties and we live pretty close to many of them, then it's, I think it would be fun to drive to each house, and it could turn into them doing work at the house or doing landscaping there, or driving by the houses and praying for the families that are there and explaining that, we own these houses and people are renting so they have a place to stay, but, that helps us make money from them, and explaining that, like, I don't foresee protecting them from that. I would say it has to be in a way that it's not going to be, we go around and cash flow from here, so go tell your friends. And, that's that sort of thing, of course. But if they can handle it, we want them to know because real estate is my job is I just had to accept, it's like I don't have a work phone and not a work phone. I have a property management company, so I'm not going back and forth with tenants, but my job is they're going to need to know that, dad had to, leave for something on a Saturday to go meet at a coffee shop with a client, or, something like that. My hope is that that's very picky and choosy, because I will want to do that, but because I like my job, but not because I have to pay the bills. Yeah. So I foresee having the kids being involved and knowing what's going on, and like I said, we can start to intertwine that this is, we're not just here to make money, we're also helping these families, and they're helping us, and yeah.
So what is your long-term vision then for the business, for what you have going on? Because you work on the agent side and you work in personal investment side. What is your long-term vision for both sides of that?
Yep. So the agent side, I've done since joining GoBundance, maybe 3-4 years ago, meeting with people, learning how to turn what was me running around like a chicken with my head cut off into a business, into a more effective systems-driven business, into, early on when I got into real estate, it was like, I want to do this to purchase. I get more excited about purchasing a fourplex that I'm going to hold long term, more than, I just made a big sale and got a commission check, because that's like a deposit into the future, being a good steward of what you have, investing it, and, eventually turning that into solid passive income coming in, so I don't have to do this job, the day-to-day job. So the vision is definitely like, I still love what I'm doing on the residential side. I'm able to delegate way more, and I've learned to do that. So I run a really efficient business that I actually provide better value to my clients than I used to, because I'm not the one communicating on everything, and that just gets to be pretty impossible to do. And then using those funds to purchase real estate and investments, and once the teeter-totter switches to whereas like the investment income is starting to outweigh this income, then it's like, makes sense to transition to, how are we, let's manage the thing that's the biggest moneymaker and quarterback that more than the other thing.
Okay.
And then having a team, there could be transition out of, being a little bit more picky choosy who I was working with, and having the, trusted team members work for, take on other deals or things like that. So there's options I would have even if it was like, hey, the family's going to go overseas for 2 months. I could just, it's nice being a part of a team that you trust people to go, hey, this is, Tom, and they're going to take over everyone on the most vertical income, which is the day-to-day helping people buy and sell homes.
Yeah. You mentioned that, starters ago after joining GoBundance, that you turned this into much more of a business and kind of straightened all that out. What did it look like before versus what does it look like now? And how did you realize you needed to make that adjustment?
What it looked like before would have been, I didn't have a full-time assistant. I was helping people. I was typing out similar messages to them, once they get a house under contract. I'm then calling an inspector, linking them up, sending them the earnest money link to submit earnest money and connect the whole, title team, and probably typing out too many things, whereas I'm typing out the same thing. Use a template, use that. Copy. My notes is full of templates for how I respond to certain things, starts of negotiations, things that I found that have worked, connections to lenders, all these different things. So getting into GoBundance, it was also, that was my first time investing in myself, paying the $10,000 to GoBundance and really doing that. I then soon after spent $30,000 for a 6-month coach in Trevor McGregor, and that was phenomenal, just to kind of start to play above the line in a lot of different areas of my life. Kind of just, I'll say, as paying a lot for a business coach / counselor, just going over daily habits and what are you doing, and giving me permission to cut things out and to do these, just be more effective with time. So before it was just a little bit unstructured, still good business practices, but unstructured, to then hiring an assistant, figuring out what my most dark green dollar activities are, focusing more on those and filling my schedule versus the light green activities, which could be, lots of things that you can delegate. And then also planting in what are my gold activities, those come first priority, and that would be date night. Those are the immovable objects. Going on a outing with the kids or something where it's if I miss a call during that time, that could have turned into a $10,000 this way or that way, or at some point it's I'm establishing who I am and what my things are going to be. So those all since the start of GoBundance. Now it's not like GoBundance fed me all that, but it's the people that are in GoBundance and making little shifts. They taught us how to, we talked to one guy and he's like, you guys are crushing it for Remax. You should restructure how you do things with them. And, that was an awesome way to, it's these little conversations can be earth-shattering, differences in yearly income or how time management or things. So, in practical ways. And then it's been a huge, blessing for business and family.
That's awesome.
And to vocalize to vocalize and go, oh, this is what I'm dealing with, and have other people that are well, I'm running really hard too, and I'll vocalize what I'm dealing with. Yeah.
And I mean, we're all dealing with stuff. So our ability to be able to communicate it and work with each other is too many times we don't want to talk about we'll talk about the problems of, oh man, traffic was terrible on the way to work today, but we don't want to talk about the problems that are true problems, right? Traffic on the way to work is not the true problem, right? That's something that we want to complain about just to be complaining. Yeah. And if you're the person that goes to the office and is man, my trip here was so smooth and easy, people, because we're just in a world full of complaining. But when you're actually driving and talking about the problems that how do we increase the value of our day, the traffic is not going to increase the value of your day, right? So let's figure out the real problems on what's going on. But I love it. So as you're continuing to grow this out, then I'm assuming you're going to continue to keep building in the systems and the processes in there, and separate. Are you planning to separate yourself more and more from the day to day, by the sounds of things, and put more and more systems and processes in place?
Yeah, I would say I'm still willing to my age, and I still enjoy it. And my work is not, who did I hear? Daniel Ramsey, he was talking, and it was like, that's very true. As I see the same thing. He's like, as I'm growing my business, you can't like peel back. You can't like minimize the time with the family or this, but you can like minimize the work time, and you can that's something that you can turn the dial. And if I get to work for 5 hours in a day, like I'm going to get what a normal person gets done in 10 hours or, something like that. I'm just going to be maximized. So I would say I still will help people buy and sell. Like it's just, I feel like too skilled to really have that be, and it's a good producing activity that I still do enjoy. And the things that feel heavy to me, I'll delegate those things in the business, but I still like having the conversations with people and negotiating on their behalf and coming up with something they're excited with. So I don't know if I'll feel different in 5 years or something, but it's not like I just want to start phasing out and not be client facing. I at first, part of GoBundance is it's like always the conversation of how are you phasing out? And I had to swallow and be like, well, some things it doesn't make sense, nor do I have to yet.
Yeah.
Like we're still doing that, and then we're adding on. It's just I can't add on other things and then also expect to have time for that too. So those need to be. But I'm still getting a little better at systems. My assistant Mariah is like amazing at. She'll come up with new templates for things, or go, hey, this has been a sticking point. Let's smooth it over here, and then I got 15 guys on my team too that I can, as soon as I figure out a good answer to something that's been a problem for 6 or 7 years that I've been in the business, I can then, here's a good template to use to kind of resolve this issue. And so that's fun to do that. And then it'll just be, just buying more real estate, trying to start to purchase like apartment buildings and stuff like that.
Yep. And well, I know a guy that has a fund going there for. No, I'm just kidding. I was running back to the joke from earlier, but no, I think that the phasing out conversation should always be around phasing out the things that suck your energy, right? If you could phase yourself out of the stuff that you don't like, because there's somebody out there that does like it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there are some things that, I don't know a ton of people that love changing poopy diapers, so there's only so much you can phase out, right? But there are certain things that if you just don't like doing them, somebody else probably does, right?
Yeah.
Like, so phase out of the stuff that you don't like so you could be more productive. I finished a book, I don't know, about a month ago at this point, but I can't remember what was the name of it? Buy Back Your Time, which I was a big fan of. I loved the book, and it's always something that it's similar, sort of, to Who Not How, but which is another phenomenal book as well. But like figuring out, okay, well, I need to put somebody in a position that really enjoys doing these things that I don't enjoy, because I'm going to be way more productive at all the stuff I do enjoy doing, because I don't have to do them. And if all I have to do, to your point, is 5 hours of work, but I can get done 10 hours of stuff, like what used to take me 10 hours, I can now do in 5 hours. Boy, this is my life a whole lot better now, right? It's a whole lot better now by getting rid of those other 5 hours of nonsense. Even if it was only an extra 2 hours of work in those 5 hours, but you were switching tasks all the time and your brain was taken up in different ways and all this stuff. And so now I've done 10 hours of work, but really only did 5 that actually made a difference. And so that I would say make that the transition talk.
Yeah, and I pay for a lot of things now that I never thought I would pay for, but it just is like it's a direct. I pay for that, and it happens, or I spend less time with the kids, or something.
Yeah.
Is just that, and then getting a lot of things done in a short amount of time is not. It's not overly challenging, like it's not rocket science, but it's simple things like if I time block 40 minutes to do something and I'm not distracted, but the moment that I look at my phone, if I create that habit, it now takes my mind, 10 minutes to get back to the point that I was. So that's a quick way to make 40 minutes But if I do 40 minutes of work, that's probably the same amount that I would do in 2 hours of like, I'm here, I'm responding to this email, take this call. Okay, I'm getting this person set up here, back to the email.
Yeah.
But if it's just, time blocking, so that's all the, like, getting better at those. It's not impossible is what I'm trying to say, to actually accomplish what someone's doing now or more in far less time, if they don't already have those practices in place.
For sure. Yeah, much agreed. It's and you get to actually enjoy your day a bit more when you actually time block those things out. Like it goes to Jocko Willing's "discipline is freedom" type of thing, right? Yeah. You have the discipline to mark down your calendar, you get the freedom to be able to know what you can and shouldn't do and all the stuff. So, but Lars, this has been an absolutely enjoyable, wonderful conversation. Is there anything that you wanted to cover that we have not gotten into yet? I'm sure we went a bunch of places you had no idea we were going to go, but is there anything that you wanted to hit on that we haven't touched yet?
No, I think I honor you, Adam, for doing this and having these conversations. It feels normal having the conversation with you, but it's not something that people sit down and listen to, on a podcast. I mean, you're creating something
I hope they do. Thank you.
They now should, or they have been. Sorry. Yeah. But it's just like, it's game changer. It's a game changer to be a good present father, and then also to go, like, for me, I'm so far from a perfect dad. I could sit here and it sounds like you're, but so, like, it sounds like when I'm talking, I'm a pretty good dad. So far from perfect dad, but it's, for me, it falls back to, I serve a perfect father in heaven, and he gives me, my whole purpose for my family is to walk like Jesus did. And how would Jesus walk if he was, husband, and if he was a father? And the nice thing for guys like us that are believers and believe that to be true is we get to ask God. We can kind of say, hey, my son is, my 3-year-old, he's really sensitive. Like, he could fall and fall on a cushion and he's like crying. My daughter's not like that. Like, she'll be bloody knee and no one knew it. But he's like gets a scrape and needs a Band-Aid for sure. Or if there's no scrape. But as like, sometimes, as like, my patience has been stretched, but I also fall on like this foundation of, hey, God, how should I treat Cruz? Like, how, tell me about him so I can be a good dad to him. 'Cause my goal is to make him be the best, boy and man that he can be. Yep. And, so it's like this, it's a struggle, but I'm enjoying the struggle of going, I'm growing. And I also get to fall back and ask the guy that created Cruz how I can be the best dad for him. So and then talking to you, talking to other men who are dads, I feel like God can bring glimpses of like, hey, you needed that. That was a little, that will move the needle for how you treat your son, because he's wired a little differently than I am, or something like that. So that's very cool.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Lars. Appreciate the encouragement. I am hoping that other people are getting a lot out of this as well. I mean, I often joke that I only am doing this for selfish reasons, but I do hope that people listen to this and take something from it, and they're able to grow and become better dads at the end of it, and better business operators. There's no point in building a $100 million empire if your kids don't know who you are. It's and there's no point in you can't also completely take care of your family and take care of your kids without bringing in the income that puts the roof over their head, right? So
Yes.
you got to be able to do both, and you got to know how to manage both, and hopefully expose your kids to what it means to be a good dad, a good husband, but also a good productive member of society. So, but I thank you very much, Lars, for jumping on. If folks want to get a hold of you, maybe they're listening from the Twin Cities and say, hey, that guy sounds like the kind of guy I want to sell my house with. What's the best way for them to reach out to you?
Good old Facebook. If you go Lars Anderson,
There you go.
Realtor in Minnesota, should pop up there. My ugly mug on. Actually, no, it's with I think it's a photo with my family. So my ugly mug and then my good looking family.
Yeah, that's the only time I smile is when I'm in a picture with my family. So other than that, You're usually not going to catch me smiling because, but no, I love it. So please, everybody who's listening, reach out to Lars if you guys would like to be selling your house, or you just want to chat with another godly man that is run some real estate operations. But thank you again so much for jumping on. I appreciate it, and thank you everybody who is listening for listening in. Please like, subscribe, all of that stuff that I'm supposed to tell you at the end of every episode. Thank you very, very much again for jumping on, Lars, and thank you everybody for I knew it. He's got to show his face in the video. Yeah, in and out. There he goes. But thank you all so much.